beautiful viewers, welcome to Tali's Closet. I'm Jessica Talita, and my dream is to be able to sew absolutely anything. Now, if this is your dream too, or even something closely related, please join, subscribe, like, please join the family, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can always get more of our videos, and we will achieve this dream together, trust me. So without wasting much time, let's get into the video. In the last video, we drafted out the pattern for this design, for this style. So I'll be dropping the link to that video in the description box so you can easily check it out if you're confused. And I'm sure when you watch it, you'll be able to catch up with what we're doing here. So right now, I'll just be adding 0.5 inches for joining allowance. And I'll just add that all around and cut it out. I'm doing the same thing on this piece. I'm adding 0.5 inches all around, but at the sides I added 1.5 inch. You can use 2 inches if you'd like. So I'm going to be checking to make sure that my back piece aligns with the front piece before I cut it out. So as you can see, I'm cutting mine and the side that I marked on the paper is facing the fabric. That's because when I was drafting it, I cut it at the other side. So you just take note of that before cutting. I'm also adding 0.5 inches and 1.5 sewing allowance to this piece as well. Once I cut out my pieces, I mostly label them so I won't get confused when joining. Next, I'll place all the pieces on gum stay, making sure that the wrong side of the fabric is what is facing the gum, and then I'll go ahead to iron it out. Now we're going to be cutting the breast part for this dress, and I'm just going to place it there. I'll mark the under bust and the bust and use a straight line to just mark that. I'll use my scissors to trace out the shape of this piece on the breast pad or the breast foam, and I'll just cut it out. So this is optional, but I wanted mine to have a conical shape, so I just curved it a little bit and then cut that out. So next I'll be cutting out the breast part for the other piece, and just like I did the first, I'll trace it out. I've gone ahead to mark the bust line and the under bust line, and then I'll just trace it out with my scissors. Now, I'm sorry I couldn't capture this, but basically what I did was just to create a sort of slanted line. I measured at the middle of the breast pad, I measured the nipple to nipple point divided by 2, and I just created a slant line around that area, and then I just slanted the top part of the breast pad just to create this shape. You can decide to go with this shape or just do it however you want to. So I've gone ahead to iron it down, and this is what it looks like. So next thing I'll be doing is to cut out the lining for all the pieces. Now for the skirt piece, I added 0.5 inches allowance at the bottom part, and I just curve that into this point, and I'll be cutting that out. Now note where you want your slit to stop, just come down by 0.5 inches at that point. Now we'll be taking out the dart, we'll be cutting out the dart. So I just went up by 0.5 inch on the dart line there because we'll be sewing that, and I'll cut this out just in a straight line, and then I'll stop at that 0.5 mark. I'm going to be using my front piece to cut the back piece. So I just put the fabric on fold and placed the front piece on it. Then I'll be marking my zipper allowance on this side, just 1.5 inches away from the front piece. I'll also be marking the hem for the back piece because you know that the front piece is longer at some sides than the back piece. So I'll just mark out the hemline for that. So next, to avoid any zip bulge, I'll just go in at the 1.5 mark by 0.5 inches. Then I'll come down by about 9 inches or 8 inches, and I'll just roll that in and connect it to that 0.5 mark I originally drew, just to prevent any zipper bulge. So I'll add that 0.5 I took back to the side seam with my rule to avoid any shortages, and our back piece is ready. I'll be cutting this out now. If you've enjoyed this tutorial up until this point, please hit the like, share and subscribe button to join the family, and just hit that notification bell as well to get more videos like this. Remember, we want to be able to sew absolutely anything, so join us as we go on that journey together. Now I'm going to be sewing my princess darts. Please sew from the underbust to the hem first before you start sewing upward. I think that will make it easier. So I'm done sewing this, and I've also ironed this properly. So you make sure you iron yours very properly so it will come out with a nice shape. I went ahead to join the lining pieces for the front and back piece, and I made sure that the lining is facing right side to right side with the fabric, so please be careful with that. Next, I'll be joining the shoulders of the front and back pieces together with just 0.5 inches. So after doing this, I joined the lining as well, and I'll place it on it like this and spread it properly and pin it, making sure that everything aligns well. Having done that, I went ahead to mark a straight line from the neckline here down to the armhole. I did not cut across the armhole. Please note that I just marked it up to the armhole point, and I'll just cut that out. So the next thing I'll do is to place this smaller piece here on the fabric you want to use for the neck collar, and then just trace out the shape that you have. So take note of, make sure you mark the neckline and then the zipper side. Also make sure you mark the shoulder joining at that point and you mark it properly, and from there I'll go down by 4 inches. You can make it wider depending on how bold you want your collar to be, but I'll just be going by 4 inches, and at this point I'll come in by 2¼ inch. Remember, I'll be joining, this is on fold, so we'll be using 0.5 inch at the top and the bottom to join it together, and I'll come in with my ruler and just create the shape that I want. You can use the shape I have here, or really you can just do you and go with whatever shape you have in mind. Remember, being creative is part of what makes you distinct and unique as a fashion designer, so you can use whatever shape you like. I'll be cutting this out now. So placing this on it, you can see how beautiful it looks. I purposely made this shiny place to be at the bottom area. Now for the larger piece, we'll be doing basically the same thing. First of all, we'll trace it out like this. So I'll just take my time and make sure I trace out the shape I have on my fabric on top of the shiny fabric I want to use for the collar. Next, I'll mark the shoulder line just like I did the smaller piece, and the armhole and the zipper line as well. And from this line, I'll come in by the same thing I used at the other side, which was 2 1/4, and then here I used 4 inches. That's the same thing I'm taking here as well. And then I'll come in and draw whatever shape I want to achieve with my ruler. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, beautiful people. Thank you so much. So placing this on the cloth, you can see how beautiful it looks. Everything is lying flat. And now I'll just go ahead and cut the second piece. So we'll be joining this together once I'm done. So I'll take the 2 pieces I have and I'll join them with 0.5 inches. So I joined it and turned it around and pressed it properly with my iron, and this is what I have. Next, I'll come in with the other piece here. I've detached the lining from it, and I'll just be using very little sewing allowance to join the collar to the front piece. I'll just pin that down properly and I'll be going to my machine to join it. So I'm done, and this is what I have. I'll be doing the same thing on the smaller piece. I'll just pin it properly and then join it with little sewing allowance. So I'm done. This is what I have. It's looking beautiful already. Now I've not yet joined this together, but we can see it already looks good. I'm going to go ahead and place my lining on this smaller piece and turn it. I'm not going to turn the armhole and the waist side. I'm just going to turn the other parts. Now this is what we have, and I'm going to be notching these areas, especially the areas that have sharp points. I'll just notch it properly so there won't be any folds once I turn it around. So remember, you're not sewing the armhole and the waist. So I've turned it and ironed it, and this is what I have. Now the next thing I'll be doing is to join the smaller piece to this larger piece. Please make sure the armhole is aligning with the armhole on the larger piece. Then I'll pin it down. I'm just going to be joining it with very little allowance. When we cut out, we did not add anything extra for joining. So just use a little allowance, less than a quarter maybe, to join this. So I've done that. I've gone ahead to iron it too, and it's laying flat and nice. So next, I'm going to spread my lining over the front piece and pin it all round so I can turn it with the lining. So when I got to this point that we just joined, I tucked it inside like you can see me do. So please make sure you do that before sewing. So I've gone ahead to sew this all round. Now I made sure that when I got to the armhole point, I did not sew across that area because the other side of the other armhole wasn't sewn. so I don't want to create any discrepancies. I just didn't sew this area and I turned it like that. I'll go ahead and notch this, making sure I do not cut through what I've sewn. That would be a disaster, but of course a repairable one. But please just be careful, make sure that as you're notching you do not cut across the line you've sewn. I'll also just be reducing the bulk of fabric at the neckline of the front so that it does not bulge too much. I went ahead to turn this around and I'll be top stitching on the lining side as well, just to make sure it lies flat. Now for our skirt piece, I'll be joining it by 0.5 inches as well. But before I do that, I'm going to join the hem. I'll take out 1 inch from the hem of the lining and also 1 inch from the curve as well. So after doing this, I'll cut it out. Next, I'll just bring it down and I'll sew by very little allowance. Now I'm done sewing that, and I also went ahead to pin the lining up to the waist part, and now I'll be marking 0.5 inches on this curved space that we have here, on this curved design that we have here, because I'll also be turning it with the lining. So I'll just go ahead and mark that like so, just like you see me do, trying to recreate that curved shape with my ruler. So once I'm done, I'll notch that as well. Now notching this area, you have to also be careful because there's very little space in between there, so make sure you don't cut through. Just make sure you notch properly. I went ahead to close the darts at the back, so I've closed it, and now I'll be turning the back just as I did the front, making sure I'm taking 1 inch allowance from the bottom as well. And having done that, this is what we have. Our dress is almost ready, guys. Now I'll just pin the front skirt piece to the front top piece. Please, you have to make sure that the darts at the top bodice and the lower skirt piece align properly before you sew. I'll advise that you sew the darts first, make sure they align before sewing the rest of the upper bodice to the lower skirt. So this is what we have so far. I'm sorry I couldn't capture when I was adding the design to the front slit, but it's just like the collar. You trace it out, then you go out by 1 inch, cut it on fold, together, and then just sew it on top. That's what I did. Now I'll be joining the front and the back piece together and marking the client's measurements on this side to make sure it aligns properly. So I've sewn that, and now it's time to attach the sleeve. I measured the round armhole and I got, I think, 16 inches. Yes, that's what I'll be using to draft the sleeve on the fabric. Now I just marked a beginning line. Then from there I measured 3.5 inches, which was the client's round bust measurement divided by 12 plus 0.5 inches. That's the measurement and the calculation. Then I ruled that out. From there I took that 16 inches, divided it by 2 and marked it on both lines I drew, my beginning line and the 3.5 inches, and I ruled a straight line. Then I also ruled diagonally and measured that. I divided it by 2 and marked it on the diagonal line right there. And from that point, I came up by 0.5 inches and just curved it in to the side like that, and then curved it again to the 8 inches mark. I added 1.5 inches allowance just like I did on the main body of the dress. Next, I measured the full length of the dress. I'll be using 9 inches, and I added 1 inch for the turning allowance that I'll be turning with the lining. Then I just ruled that out, and I marked the round sleeve measurements, which was about 5¾ inches, and then I connected that with my ruler, making sure that I connected it with the curved line at the beginning especially. So I've cut that out. I also used it to cut the lining, exactly the same thing, and from the lining I'll take 1 inch out and I'll cut it out. Then I'll place it on the sleeve I have and I'll sew that. So now I've sewn it, I've gone ahead to turn it and iron it properly. It's looking neat, and this is it, guys. We are done. Our dress is looking beautiful. I've attached the sleeves, to the main body of the fabric, and this is what we have. If you like this and you tried it out, just let me know in the comment section what you think and if you were able to achieve this beautiful design.